The Seven Principles of Mindfulness for Pain, of Working with Pain by John Kabat-Zinn, The Seven Principles of Working with Mindfulness. And his number one principle is, as long as you are breathing, there is more right with you than wrong with you, no matter what is wrong. 2, the power of mindfulness is in the present moment, and bringing the present moment and inhabiting or dwelling in the present moment. When faced with situations we don't like, we usually turn away from them or ignore them. And then the mindfulness approach. So there's breathing, then there is mindfulness of the present moment. There's being in the present moment. There is inhabiting the present moment. And then there is opening to the present moment and befriending it moment by moment. And that was where we left off last time, was essentially using the practice of mindfulness to not only learn how to breathe, using the practice of mindfulness to inhabit the present moment, using the practice of mindfulness to come to the present moment, but then using the practice of mindfulness to open towards the present moment, open towards the experience, even if it is an unpleasant experience, that we are opening towards it, that we are being mindful of it, and we see it as it is, and even befriending it. And I forgot to bring my my other book today on that, but we'll get to that some other day. And then we have number 6, which is opening to experience moment by moment. So this is the path of mindfulness involves learning to open to your experience moment by moment with kindness and compassion towards yourself. Whether your experience at any given time is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, and ordinary, that you may not notice it at all. It also invites you to notice how judgmental and reactive the mind is, and to approach each moment as best you can, without judging the experience as good if you like it, bad if you don't like it or want it, or boring if you don't have any particular feeling one way or the other. As we saw earlier, this doesn't mean we won't have plenty of dislikes or judgments. It means that we can create the intention to suspend our tendency to be perpetually triggered and to instantly judge everything depending on whether, often in a fraction of a second, we like it or we don't like it. We could recognize and therefore tame our propensity to react automatically and therefore mindlessly and with significant emotion, such as anger, hatred, aversion, or disappointed, to what we don't like or feel threatened by and simply wish would go away. And by the same token, with great mindfulness, we can recognize and therefore also tame our impulse to quest after and cling to what it is that we do like and want to last longer or have more of. In both cases, we're somewhat, if not majorly off balance in that particular moment, and thus lacking in equanimity and peace of mind. This can actually be remedied in any moment, even highly charged ones, if we just back off a little, come back to awareness itself, including of our breathing, if we have experienced that. Doing so has a grounding and stabilizing effect. This affords us, in any moment we are ready to recognize it, a larger perspective of what is actually unfolding in that moment, which is always really this moment. when we intentionally approach our experience of any moment mindfully, we immediately have a new way to cultivate emotional balance in the very situations that usually push our buttons and lead to stress, reactivity, emotional turbulence, and upset. Mindfulness is not an ideal that we are trying to impose on others, nor is it a special state that we are striving to acquire. On the contrary, mindfulness is awareness itself, pure and simple. It is an innate capacity we all have, an inner resource that is always available to us, and that over time we can teach ourselves to recognize and inhabit much more regularly and reliably. The challenge is whether we can access our awareness in any given moment, especially in those moments when we need it most. Why? Because we tend to be so caught up in the stream of our thoughts and in our own emotional reactivity in any given moment. But this is precisely where the actual cultivating of mindfulness moment by moment comes in. In the meditation practice itself, we become more aware of our thoughts and feelings, all of them, simply as events in the field of awareness rather than as facts, and therefore the truth of things, which they almost invariably are not. So there's a lot to unfold there and digest. But part of it is opening to the experience moment by moment, right? So at any moment, there is the tendency of going towards moments we like and a tendency towards pushing away moments we don't like. And so simply noticing that almost instantaneous, almost immediate reactivity that occurs. That is actually part of mindfulness. Is, I immediately reacted wanting to go towards that. Oh, I immediately reacted wanting to resist that, or whatever it might be. And simply noticing that, noticing the reactivity of the mind is mindfulness, right? So that is a very powerful thing. The other thing is that we actually by practicing that we bring on this element of equanimity. There's a element of equanimity that comes where things are neither good nor bad, where there's no judgment about them, that they simply are. And these are simply moments in awareness that are arising, and each moment is another moment in awareness. So that can be very powerful in terms of a practice that can be developed. The other one then is is the importance of practice. And why the importance of practice is that we can come back to when we feel like an event is charged, and pain can often feel like that. We tend to not be in the present moment, and we tend not to be resting in awareness. And so when pain is charged, let's say pain is increased, that we usually get lost in the stream of thoughts, emotions, sensations. Oftentimes we might react differently than we hope or wish. And, when you're in a lot of pain and something, let's say somebody annoys you, how quick are we to react? Get out of here, right? Leave, just leave me alone. Right. And it might even be somebody like wanting to give you a hug or something like that, We've probably all done it we probably all reacted in ways that we wish we hadn't when we were in pain, because oftentimes that the pain is taking so much of our awareness, so much of our attention, that we're not in the present moment, that we're thinking about the worst case scenario, that we're down in panic mode, that we're in wallow land, and we're not getting out of it. And so, if you ask yourself, well, when I'm wallowing, do I react better to stressful situations when I'm wallowing, or when I'm in present moment awareness? And the majority of us would probably say, oh, I definitely react better when I'm coming from awareness as opposed to when I'm wallowing. Okay? Whatever that reaction might be. And so the practice of mindfulness then really comes as doing this practice when your pain is manageable, so that you train yourself to rest in awareness, and that becomes more of a trait than just a something that we bring on over and over and over again. But the bringing on, the repetition of it, helps it develop into a trait. And so it becomes easier to tap into that energy, to get into that space when a moment of distress, a moment of increased pain, a moment of wallow arises, that we don't find ourselves being pulled into the trenches of it. Right? Here I am going into the trenches. Oh no. We've all done it. Right? And with time and practice, we may find that being less emotionally reactive, less critical in our judgments, kinder and more accepting of ourselves and our moments, whatever they are, gradually becomes our go-to mode or our default setting. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is important, right? Because we want to go into our we want to create our default mode. Okay, that's really important. What are you creating? What's the default mode that you are creating? Because the default mode that you are creating is, that is the mode that you are bringing up over and over and over and over again. It just is. Simple as that. All right. And so by doing it, by practicing it and repeating it over and over again, that's actually creating the default mode. Okay. So that's a really important piece there. With time and practice, we find that being less emotionally reactive, less critical in our judgments, kinder and more accepting of ourselves and our moments. Right? We can be accepting of ourselves, but maybe not our moments. I don't want this moment to be this moment. How silly is that, right? How silly is that? I don't want this moment to be this moment. This gradually becomes our go-to mode and our default setting. We may also discover that reacting to whatever we don't like or don't want with anger, resentment, fear, or self-loathing results in a kind of contraction of mind and body that only increases our pain and aggravates our distress and suffering. Right? So how many people have noticed that? When you're wallowing, what happens? Don't we sort of retract from society? We retract from wanting to spend time with others. We retract from, somebody invites you out to dinner. We retract from that. And then what? There's self-pity about you not going out to dinner. Does that make things better or worse? Well, my pain is so bad that I can't go out to dinner, and now I can't go out to dinner, and now I'm just a lonely person. I'm just going to get old and lonely all by myself. right? Does that make the pain better or worse? Okay. So that's the self-loathing. That's the wallow. And we go into that. Right? We've all done it to some degree. I know we have. Now we notice, wow, that wasn't so much fun. I was still in pain, but I was sitting on my couch in pain as opposed to maybe being with somebody else. And we retract, right? So contraction. Ugh. All right. So then he goes on. So shifting how we react to experiences in our lives as they are unfolding can have a very positive, meaningful, and at times liberating influence on our pain. And a lot of this shift happens naturally without forcing things to be a certain way, just through gently engaging with our moments. All right. And that I think is important because many people feel like, oh, um, I don't know, I need to change something. I need to change the way. It's really about just practicing mindfulness every moment. If that's what you need to change, then be more mindful. But it's not like, oh, I need to take this. It's not like, oh, I need to take this experience and shift it. It's more actually about opening up to this experience as it's unfolding right now. And through that opening up, guess what? There's going to be a natural shift. But we don't actually, there's nothing that we have to do except for opening up to the unfoldment of it and notice how we are interacting with it in real time, in the moment, right? And that's why he says moment to moment. I feel like, well, uh, 5 and 6 from here are just 5 and 6 on here. The first three, I felt like, yeah, present moment, breathing, great. 5 and 6 are really powerful in here, and really, it's really about fully and truly leaning into our experience as it is, right, and turning towards it. And as difficult as that is, right, or as painful as that might seem, or as hard, there's actually some quite liberation in it. It's like, okay, I've been fighting it for how many years? Let me not. What if, right? And that's the part that's sort of like, look, and that's kind of what I say is like, look, what you've been doing for so many years, right? And here you are. And how has it worked? Well, if it's worked for you, great. And continue doing that, right? Fantastic. Whatever it is that you're doing, if you're loving your experience, this is like, hey, I am totally mindful of every moment that arises and present with it and open to it. Great. But the majority of us are not. The majority of us are not. And I think that's where it comes. And that's where, in my experience, in my opinion, it's like when you start working with something like pain, and I feel why, this is such a sort of a potent topic, is you can really use it for so many different parts of your life. Like, how many different parts of our life besides the pain that we're feeling are we pushing away, or are we resisting, or this or that, not wanting to look at, right? Not wanting to look at mindfully, not turning towards, even if it might be a difficult situation. So using pain essentially as a stimulus for enlightenment. Kind of like, hey, I'm gonna go towards everything. I'm gonna turn towards the moment in every moment and see how that works.